You know that positive feeling when you find out a brand new mainline entry in a popular JRPG series is announced? Well, that's what myself and a lot of other fans had in 2022 when Square Enix announced Visions of Mana, the all-new 5th mainline entry in the Mana series. I was able to check this game out on Steam Deck thanks to Square Enix sending me a review code. Yep, Senpai noticed me. Now first off, I want to say that I'm approaching this release as a newcomer to the Mana series rather than a series veteran, like a lot of other reviewers no doubt are, given this is a long-running series. I do have past Mana games on my backlog, including Secret of Mana, which is widely considered to be one of the best RPGs of all time. I have completed Visions of Mana. It took me just over 30 hours, and this was primarily focused on the main story, but I did do a few other things such as exploring the map and some side quests. This is where I'm coming from for this video. Let's get straight into it. So, what is Visions of Mana all about? Visions of Mana is set in a world where the Mana tree provides all support for life. This ranges from crops, to villages and towns, and of course, the climate. Various towns and villages across this world have to provide alms every 4 years to sacrifice to the Mana tree. This is so the world can be preserved, securing the future of humanity, and if they don't do this, their homes and the environment will be destroyed as the elements of Mana begins to go off balance. This game is told from the perspective of Val, a soul guard. A soul guard is, well, in a nutshell, an escort. Val has to travel around the world with the alms, picking them all up and taking them all to the Mana tree in order to complete the sacrificial ritual. Visions of Mana's story is overall really good. It does take a while to pick up, especially in the beginning. However, it does get interesting later on as you begin to discover more about the world of Visions of Mana. Obviously, I'm not going to go into the story because, well, 1, embargo, and 2, I think you should experience it for yourself anyway. As mentioned, the story does take a while to pick up. It's very slow in the beginning, which is quite typical for the genre, but even later on, Visions of Mana's story does have some great plot twists and heartfelt moments between the characters. This is very much a character-driven story rather than a world-building one. It's rooted in JRPGs from the SNES era right the way to the PS2 era, back when the previous Mana titles were all made, not including spin-offs. Personally, I would prefer well-told stories that are not amazing, like Visions of Mana, rather than a great story or premise that's told poorly. And this includes having character-driven RPGs over world-building RPGs in a lot of situations. Of course, as this is a character-driven RPG, I do want to highlight first off that the characters are really good. And this is firstly in part due to a great localization. I have no complaints with the script. The English dub is also really good. I've heard past Mana games, especially the remake for Trials of Mana, did not have a very good dub. I liked it. It's very Americanized. I do tend to prefer British dubs because we get American dubs in pretty much everything, but it fits the setting really well. And there's clearly been some budget and time put into it, and I really appreciate that. As for the characters themselves, they all have their own character arcs, especially the alms. They go on a journey of being a sacrifice and confronting what this is truly about, their own mortality, bunch of other themes as well. When I say it's a character-driven RPG, I do like how Visions of Mana explores these themes for each individual character, as well as the world around them. And it's really nice and refreshing. It's a mature story that's told in a mature manner. As for characters, my favourites include Hina, the Alm of Fire, who sets off with Val at the start of the game. There's also Morley, a catman who you meet early on in your journey. Palomena, the Alm of Water, who is very regal, polite, and knowledgeable. And even some other non-playable characters like Piccolo, an eccentric merchant you meet in Illastana, the largest city in the world. I do like all the characters, even those with more blunt, abrasive personalities are delivered quite well. This world truly does feel alive. Throughout your time with Visions of Mana, you will be spending lots of time with this band of destined allies, but become friends and comrades. It's really lovely to see them all bond. The dialogue is charming and funny, not just in cutscenes but also in battles and across the world map. It further helps build a sense of whimsical, light-hearted fantasy, very anime, very cartoony, truly falls into high fantasy as well as typical JRPG style, and I love it. The character designs by returning illustrator Hakan also help, which you see on the title screen and other promotional material. Moving on to the gameplay, this is a semi-open world action RPG with exploration and combat in real time. Now, the exploration is the highlight of Visions of Mana by far, outside of the story. This world map is absolutely beautiful. It's so vast. There's such a vibrant, colourful aesthetic like I touched on a bit earlier. There's some fantastic lighting and visual effects which, on a Steam Deck OLED screen, look absolutely amazing. I spent literal hours walking around these maps, collecting all the chests and unlocking new secrets. There are many nooks and crannies to explore, optional battles, strong enemies that resemble the FOEs from Etrian Odyssey or Xenoblade Chronicles unique monsters. Oh, I just loved it so much. There's so much variety in the atmosphere that ranges from icy peaks to lush forests, beautiful sandy beaches, and even auroras. This game is a visual treat, whether it's the open maps or even the various dungeons throughout the game. Visions of Mana's world reminds me so much of Xenoblade Chronicles 3's open world, which isn't surprising since the directors Ryusuke Yoshida and Kenji Osawa have said in interviews they've taken direct inspiration from Xenoblade's world as part of designing Visions of Mana's world. In some ways it feels like a more compact version of that, which I really appreciate. Moreover, as this is more of a traditional RPG, you can unlock mounts, so we can ride animals on land and sea, and even in the air. It's so amazing and really builds a sense of exploration into this world. Visions of Mana's world map is quite tiny, especially compared to games like the aforementioned Xenoblade Chronicles, but it's also so fun to explore, a unique sense of exploration. It's just really cool. Throughout Visions of Mana, you can obtain spirit vessels. These are special items that can enhance gameplay in both exploration and battles. In terms of the environment, you can interact with it using these gifts that makes the world feel more alive and can help enhance the gameplay, especially when you're in dungeons. In exploration, examples include using the wind element to block high ledges, using the earth to transform into a golem and destroy things in order to proceed. Water, you can make bubbles you can ride on, allowing you to scale cliffs or cross gorges. It's very non-linear in its design. Another thing I like is the further you progress into the story, the more elements you unlock, and then you can come back to earlier areas to find new elements to unlock, more bonuses to pick up, and even shortcuts to help you traverse around the world a lot easier. In terms of battles, these do take place in real time. To instigate a battle, go up to the enemies and just get your weapons out, or just start attacking, whatever makes sense. In Visions of Mana, enemies usually come in packs, and you've also got a lot of options at your disposal to take them down. This includes physical attacks, magical spells, using powers from the elements, much like you can interact with the environment you can use in battles. The Sylphid Boomerang is the first one you pick up, which is the wind element. Other ones include a water shoot, which is kind of like a hose, if that makes sense. And even later ones like Light, being able to sever things together. Darkness skill that allows you to zoom across the map and latch onto bosses. It's very helpful in really tough boss fights, which I'll come back to. I recommend battling enemies as you go in order to reduce grinding. You can also use items to boost the experience you get, like up to 20%, which really does help. Enemies on the map are usually quite easy, outside of a few unique monsters that are hard to kill. If you've played Xenoblade Chronicles, it's very similar to that. But also they tend to be a bit easier, so if you put time in and you're leveled correctly, you can just go and kill it. I would recommend using this time as an excuse to fully explore the map. Open chests and immerse yourself in Visions of Mana's world. There are side quests too, which you can use to go around and defeat enemies, collect items. They're the weakest part of the game for me. They're usually just fetch quests, but that's okay. If you want 100% this game, there's so much out there for you. Another aspect of Visions of Mana that I really liked was the class customization system. You can use the spirit vessels to change the classes of the alms, which unlock new skills, equipable weapons, spells, and more to help change the tide of battle. There's so much variety and customization available, and it's a ton of fun. The battle system is very satisfying. It's easy to grasp, yet takes time to fully understand and utilise for your advantage. Yet if you just want to play through the game and have fun, you can do that as well. As I touched on a bit earlier, there are boss sequences. There are some absolutely incredible boss sequences later on in the game. The further in the game you go, the better, more memorable and more complex the bosses become, and they can be very challenging to take down. The same theme also applies to the dungeons. The dungeons start off quite simple, but they become more complex as well, and really utilise the powers of the spirit vessels and make some awesome puzzles that introduce the mechanics. I love it a lot. It starts off slow in the first half of the game, much like the story, but back half of the game is so rewarding. And this is before touching into how the dungeons and the bosses also drive the story. And even in battles you can hear character dialogue that relates to these things, and it's just awesome. Moreover, some of the dialogue you hear in dungeons and around the world also provide hints to help you solve the puzzles, so I recommend listening to the dialogue if you can. Customization also stems to the music. If you have the Digital Deluxe Edition, you can switch between Visions of Mana's OST as well as some music from previous Mana titles. I didn't utilise this because I have not played the previous titles, but I do think that's really cool. The original music for Visions of Mana is great, it fits the atmosphere really well, and there are some genuinely memorable tunes. I'm not sure I'll pick up the soundtrack myself, which has a separate release in Japan, but I definitely think it's a cool addition to a video game enthusiast collection if you like the game. Visions of Mana's soundtrack was composed by series veterans Hiroki Kikuta, Tsuyoshi Sekito, and Ryo Yamazaki. As for technical stuff, I played it on the Steam Deck. It's officially Steam Deck playable and overall runs pretty well. The main thing that I noticed throughout my playthrough is the text is a bit small. This is typical for a lot of Steam Deck screen games, and it is quite manageable, especially if you're playing it using a dock on TV. As for other technical stuff, there were some frame rate dips at times, mainly in cutscenes and some of the more demanding boss fights. I've had a few crashes as well, and I would like to see it fixed. I definitely recommend playing through it if you've got a Steam Deck, but just bear in mind there's still some technical stuff which hopefully Square Enix are able to fix. I also know that this may not be possible, and I want to touch on an update relating to the developer Oka Studios, which you're probably already aware of. I want to make sure this review is as accurate as possible, so I'm mentioning it. The developer Oka Studios, who is part of NetEase Games, are reportedly shut down. It did dampen the launch because, well, the developers, they put out this great game only to find that NetEase are shutting the studio down. And while it is possible that they knew about this and Oka Studios may just have been contracted out, it's still a bit unfair, and I do want to highlight it. And I know this is not Square Enix's fault, but I do try to at least credit key staff when I make game reviews, as I've done in other videos. I want to emphasise that it's clear that the developers at Oka Studios, as well as staff from Square Enix that worked on the title, they put a lot of time, energy and passion into Visions of Mana, and it's important to talk about that and really talk about how great this game is. Even if Oka Studios is no more, Visions of Mana has set a legacy for itself, and hopefully the developers involved will be able to find work in the future and be proud of what they've achieved. As for my final thoughts on Visions of Mana, I think this is a fantastic game. I won't compare it to other Mana games because I've not played them. The reception from series fans and other gaming critics who have generally been very positive. I know there's been a few mixed reviews which I've not read because I don't read mixed reviews while making my own. I think Visions of Mana also serves as a great palette cleanser between the more complex story and gameplay heavy RPGs, in part due to it being clearly faithful to traditional old school RPGs. And if you like that style of game with modern accessibility and a coat of paint, you should check out Visions of Mana. I think it's great. It's around 30 to 40 hours in total, but you can play more with all the side content, especially if you want to 100% it with the side quests. I didn't 100% it, I won't 100% it, but I had a great time with it. You can get this game physically on PS5, Xbox Series, and even the PlayStation 4 in Europe and Asia. Not in America, but hey, it's a PS4 game in 2024. If you got a PS4, I'm sure it runs great on there too. It's on Steam as well, that's how I played it. Pretty much on everything except Switch. And will probably come to Switch too in the future, but that is speculation on my part. It's a potential Game of the Year up for me. I don't know for sure if it's going to be my Game of the Year yet, but hopefully by the end of the year I'll update you on that. And I do plan to play the older Mana games at some point. So yeah, those are my thoughts on Visions of Mana. If you've played this game, let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. If you've played other Mana games, also let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. Thank you again to Square Enix for sending me a code for Visions of Mana, and thanks again to everyone for watching this video. When it comes to game reviews, I talk mainly about JRPGs and visual novels on this channel, so if that interests you, alongside other gaming discussion, please like, comment, subscribe, algorithm boosting stuff, consider becoming a channel member, etc. and so forth. Thanks so much everybody, have a lovely day, bye bye.